Hi, I'm Dr. Cyndi Romine, and I'm so glad to be with you guys today at Advantage Heating and Air Conditioning. You have been amazing to us as an organization. I am the international director and founder of Call to Rescue. Our mission is to rescue minor children from sex trafficking.
Have you noticed an uptick, especially on social media, just with the number of conversations surrounding sex trafficking and trafficking of children, just really in the last few weeks, even, or the last few months?
Yeah, I have, absolutely. You know, I thought maybe when the pandemic started, because more parents would be home, supposedly, but of course they're working at home, and all the kids are given iPads by the schools
Yeah.
with connection to the internet. And so there is definitely an uptick, and we have a 20% rise in child sex trafficking.
In what time frame? Like, in what span of time has that
I,
increased?
I think I heard that statistic like in April. So it had already, just between a few weeks in March and April, it has just continued to go up. And I think it's probably gone up more. I know that the FBI, different groups have been doing more raids recently. And so that's good for us because that's getting children back. But like in one raid, they'll pick up 134 kids.
Wow.
Right? Or another raid, they'll pick up 256. I mean, just they track these houses and they track these perpetrators, and and there they are, and we get our kids back.
So, how long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this since 1988 was the official start date, although I rescued kids before that time in the United States. But in 1988, my husband and I moved to the Philippines, and my husband and my son and I decided to do a tourist activity, and so we went and rented a canoe, outrigger canoe with the outriggers. It's very fun. We're having a great time. But on the side of the bank of the river, I watched a tall, gray-haired Caucasian guy buy a little girl. She was probably 3. And so I watched the money exchange. I knew it was like the minute it happened, I knew exactly what was happening. And of course, I was just sick to my stomach, sick in my head. It was just the worst thing. I couldn't get out of the boat to go rescue her. And so there we were. But a couple weeks later, we had an assignment from this lady. We'd gone to a church, and she said, my son is with my husband, my ex-husband, in the Philippines, and he bought a bar. The husband bought a bar, and now he's got a girl, or many girls, for this 16-year-old son of hers.
Wait, he had gotten girls for him?
Yeah, the dad got girls for the son. And so all that was going on, and she said, you've got to rescue my son. And I said, well, okay, we'll go look for him. I mean, I didn't know where we were going, right? So and it was not the day of putting GPS into your phone. Okay, so we had to figure out where to go. We figure out where to go, and we found him. We rescued him. We put him on a bus, sent him back to Manila to get on an airplane. Everything was arranged. We stayed another night, and during that evening we took a walk. My husband and I took a walk, and I think my son was along, and there were our babies. They were American babies. Subic Bay Naval Base is there in Olongapo. It's now closed, but it was then. And of course the prostitutes were out on the street, and our boys were out on the street. And so what I saw was the neglect of the U.S. military of leaving all these kids. And I can imagine they're probably in every port now in the world, right, that we've been. But I couldn't take it. I saw them eating garbage out of the street, and I saw them being used and bought sexually, and they weren't getting any of the money. And so I rounded up a pastor, and we bought him a house, and we got him a van, and we went ahead and started our first orphanage overseas.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was wonderful. And some of the kids, because they were U.S. citizens, we tracked their dads. I mean, their stories. I mean, we got this one guy. He had a very unusual name, which I'm not going to use on
Yeah,
tape, right?
probably a good idea.
And yeah, probably a good idea. And his mother came by. The child's mother came by, although she was in our orphanage. And when she came by, it was like maybe a week after she dropped her son off. She said, "And I know who the father is. It's this guy. This is his name. This is the city he's from. You can find him." So as soon as I got that information, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to call this guy out of the blue. You know, it's kind of like, here we go. So I found his number because he had never moved from that city. He was this kid who stayed in that city with this very different name. So I called him on the phone and I said, "Hi, I'm Dr. Cyndi Romine, and I have an orphanage in the Philippines, and I think I have your son there." The longest silence you have ever heard in your lifetime.
I bet.
And then he started to cry.
The dad?
The dad. He said, "I'm married now." And he said, "I have children with my wife. But I want you to know I was a good guy. I only had one relationship, and it was with this woman. And I know she was faithful to me, and I want my son." So then the process began. We had to get DNA. He said, "I just bring him over." I said, No. We got to get DNA samples. We're going to do this correctly." "Oh, no, she was faithful. I know that's my son." I insisted DNA samples, and we did all of that back and forth, and it wasn't his son.
Whoa.
And he said to me on the phone, "I'll take him anyway." And I said, "You're going to wait a month, and then if you really want him then, you can call me back, and then we'll talk about it." Because it was such an emotional response.
Yeah.
I didn't want him making that huge lifelong decision. It wasn't his child.
Right, no, that
Yeah.
makes total sense.
Yeah. So we waited, and he never called back, and the kid is doing great.
That's awesome.
It's always good to know that the end of the story is good. He's now older, and he's married, and he has his own children, and he's doing just
That's awesome.
fine. Yeah.
So your journey officially began when you saw that 3-year-old being purchased.
Right.
How often is that kind of thing happening?
Every day, all day long. Every day, all day long. I was in a park in the Philippines, and I saw this maybe 10 or 12-year-old girl was in she was in the swings, and I went over and I started talking to her, and I said, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "Every day, if I'm here between 3 and 4, a man comes." I said, "He does, and what happens when the man comes?" And she said, "He gives me money." And I said, "Do you have to give him your body?" "Yes, I give him my body, but I have money to feed my siblings."
How old?
Between 10 and 12 somewhere. She was actually supporting her family. And so that's what's happening today, Brandon, all over the world, by the way. People are starving. They don't have any way to make money. They're told they can't make money because we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Right.
But there is still one way the family can eat. So I'm sure it's on a rise worldwide.
What about in the U.S.? Like, how often are children being trafficked just in the United States?
Well, this is the shocker. Any night of the year, there are 500,000 children missing in the United States.
Just in the U.S.?
Yes. They say that there's 1.2 million trafficked every night worldwide.
Trafficked? 1.2 million
Trafficked.
Not just missing, but...
No, trafficked.
That's insane.
It is, what size of the city do you live in? It's like twice the size of that, probably, right? Or 3 times.
That's a good 7 times the size of Salem, Kaiser.
Right.
I mean, that's like Portland metro area.
Right, yeah.
And in what time? Every year? Every 1.2 million?
They say every year there's 1.2 trafficked.
Insane.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's repeats in that. And our statistics are bad, right? Because nobody's really keeping really honest statistics. But that is, if you go to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, that's John Walsh's group. And, his son was murdered, and so he's taken on this fabulous way to help us do all of the things we do with children. But they're like on it. Every day they will have new numbers and new things that you can go to and really get solid statistics, because it changes every day.
And how often or how many times do you think that the trafficking goes from a one-off to something that's long-term? You were before the cameras got messed up, you were talking about something that this was, like online ordering.
Right. Online ordering is almost exclusively how perpetrators do it today. And so they...
Online ordering of
children.
Wow.
Like a pizza. I want a girl or a boy. 30% of the kids trafficked are boys, 70% are girls. I want a girl that is 5'6", brown hair, blue eyes, whatever they want, the weight, and then what they will actually do for the amount of money the guy's paying. So it's all online, it's all scripted out, and then that child is delivered to a hotel that is the choice of the person perpetrating.
How are they getting away with, like, if it's online, couldn't it be like traceable? Or
it is, and they trace it all the time. And this is not a political statement, this is a fact.
Sure.
All right. Microsoft has a group of people, of 3,000 people, that do nothing but trace minor children sex trafficked. And it's so horrendous, that work that they have to do, and the images are so bad that every 3 weeks they take them out and put a new group in. They rotate them. They have to rotate them.
The employees.
Yes, because it's just so horrific to sit and watch those images all day long. And then they have special counseling for them.
That's staggering. Just at Microsoft, 3,000 people, 1.2 million kids trafficked at any given time worldwide. So I want to try and jump into something. You made a statement that this was like ordering a pizza. There's a lot going around right now, flooding social media, whether it's Pizzagate or Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. Are you comfortable talking about, just strictly your opinion, since that you are involved, you've been involved in this for, what would that be, 30 plus years?
Yeah, I'm only 20, so it's amazing.
Fair, totally
okay,
fair.
all right, okay.
What are your thoughts on this idea that there are elites in our society, so to speak, that are partaking in this trafficking?
My opinion is every one of them's true.
Really?
That's my personal opinion.
Sure.
That's what you asked for. I don't have any way to prove that, except I already know. Like, I have this one little girl we rescued back a while ago. And I'm going to be very careful on this because she's in this area, so I need to be careful, what I say about her. But her mom was a nurse in a smaller city in our area, and she sold her daughter at 6 years old to everybody in that city, the judges,
Holy shit.
And we've had to move her out of that area because she has so much to tell. Right now we have her in protection. So, yeah, I totally believe it. I mean, I'm the one that deals with it every day.
Right.
Nothing shocks me anymore. Matter of fact, I'm a skeptic, right? Because if somebody says, does this happen? Yep, that happens. And I'm on the street. I know what goes on the streets and what happens. I know how it works.
It's just so mind-blowing because when you try to bring that up, especially that there's Hollywood elites, government officials, people like that partaking in this, the first response from, I would say, half or more is, oh, this conspiracy theory, you have no proof, this is ridiculous. How do you combat that when you're trying to address such a huge issue? Issue's not even the word.
No.
That's a pandemic in and of itself.
Right.
What's happening with sex trafficking, especially on that level, from people that you would assume you could trust, politically or otherwise.
Right.
How do you combat that when you have so many people claiming conspiracy theory? It can't be true.
Right. I don't try. These are the facts. This is what I know. How do I know it? From personal testimony from the girls I rescue. If they don't want to believe that, I totally understand, because it's so horrific to believe that this stuff can be going on. But like you say, if you're even watching social media a little bit, you're watching all these kids are missing right now. And where are they missing? This week, I've tried to rescue, and I've had calls on from parents. That's who usually calls me. How can I find my kid? We have a 12-year-old missing, and they brought a 13-year-old in because we're in the pandemic and the kids wanted to see each other, and they kept her like for a couple of weeks. And between the two girls, they figured out that they wanted to leave because they were bored being home, and they found a 20-year-old guy. So he said, 20-year-old guy, online, and they went, and we're assuming they met him. It's all assumption. We have no way to prove anything, but they are gone. And if we don't find them probably in the next 3 or 4 days, those girls will be, if they're not already, trafficked. You know, I have girls that I've rescued out of sex trafficking that have been in for 6 or 7 years. And their stories are so horrific and mind-blowing. As much as I know, I still sit and think, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Because it's so horrific. I have one girl who went, I live in Washington, you live in Oregon, so Portland's our big city. And she went with a friend downtown Portland to go to a teen club. And on the way back, they got lost. They didn't know what they're doing. They're from Vancouver. Now they're downtown Portland. They got on the wrong bus. They didn't know what to do, so they got off the bus. And they got off the bus in a completely wrong place. And so they were talking. They said, boy, we're really in the wrong place. We got to get out of here. We got to figure this out. And right then, guy drives up, brand new pickup. Good-looking guy. Wealthy. Obviously had money. Right? So they were feeling, he has money, we're okay. Where I would be feeling, where did he get the money? And you're not okay, right? And so anyway, they got in the pickup. He said, I'll take you home. They told him where they lived, and he took him home. And he was a gentleman. And he was very kind. And he said, can I see you again? Can I have your phone number? Oh, yeah. She gave him a phone number. He called the next day. He was very kind, very wonderful, took her out to dinner, like for 3 days. The grooming happened.
Right.
And then he said, there's a family reunion. We're going to go to Seattle. So she got in the truck and they went to Seattle, and he pulled into a motel, and she said, well, what are we doing here? And he said, well, I just thought maybe you want to get freshened up or whatever before you have to meet my family. And he went on and on a bunch of stuff. Anyway, she went in the motel room, and he tied her to a chair, and he bleached her hair, and he put her out on the street that day, that moment. She was hysterical. She was crying. Her makeup was all streaked. She looked a mess. And of course, somebody still picked her up. And that was the beginning of her story. The end of her story, she had been thrown in trunks of cars, tased, anything bad that you can possibly imagine she had been through. The guy that picked her up had a home, hacienda type thing out in the desert in California, and he drove in, and she was the 5th girl in the group, and this is lucrative. So if you're a pimp and you have 5 girls in a group, or guys and girls in a group, you will make $200,000 tax-free per year.
Wow.
Right? Because no taxes, nobody knows what they're doing. So anyway,
Right.
Takes her into the hacienda. She's there for a couple weeks. One of the girls is throwing a fit. She didn't want to do it anymore. And he actually killed her in front of the other 4. So now everybody's complicit. Everybody's going to do whatever they're told. So then now he takes her in on the street in Hollywood area, and he's pimping her out down there. This story, 6 years, goes on and on and on. She ends up in Las Vegas making her pimp $5,000 a night.
Wow.
And so everybody asks me this question: how come she didn't run away? She is followed the entire time. He knows exactly where she is. He knows who she's with. She does not have a phone except that is linked through to him. These guys are professional. They run a business. And she could not get away. How did she get away? She was arrested.
Wow.
Thank God. And her dad flew to California, frantic, hadn't seen his baby in 6 years, and picked her up at the police station and took her home.
Thank God.
And
after 6 years.
After 6 years. And she's now married and has babies and is as normal as you could possibly be after going through all that. The youngest person that I have rescued myself was 4.
Wow.
And even telling the story is just so hard on me personally. Actually, her 8-year-old sister rescued her and got her to us, and her parents came along, and we were at a restaurant meeting because the police were involved. Everybody's involved, and so we don't usually take children to a police department. It's just too overwhelming, right? We take them, yeah. And I said to the mama, I said, what would the girls like to eat? And she said, she's very humble. She said, could they have some chocolate ice cream? And I almost broke down in tears. That I thought, this is what kids are made for, chocolate ice cream.
Yeah.
This is what they're made for. We need to save our babies just for chocolate ice cream. And the rest of this should never be part of their little lives.
How do you do this every day?
Well, I don't tell all these stories in a row every day. But it is hard. It is hard. And sometimes I'll just say, okay, I'm taking a walk, and my husband knows exactly what I mean. Yeah. I'm out of here, and I can't take any more phone calls, and I'm done for the day. But I do want to say this, Brandon. What I do isn't any different than what the police do, or the fire department does, or the EMTs. These people are out on the front line seeing this stuff, again, every day, all day long. And they also have to have breaks. But I take my hats off. I have many hats. I take them all off for these people. I work with the FBI, local police, Homeland Security, everybody. I work with everybody, and they're all in there to protect and to get these kids back.
You had mentioned a grooming process, or at least you referenced that term specifically. I know that's, or at least it sounds like that's one of the things that Ghislaine Maxwell right now is being charged with,
yes,
or being looked into for, is for grooming these underage girls for Epstein Island and, to be used by Hollywood elites and politicians. Because when I watched the documentary on Netflix about Jeffrey Epstein, and I understand that they're young girls, and I'm not saying that it doesn't make sense that they can be coerced into this, but how does somebody gain that trust so quickly? It just seems baffling to me that it would be that, with not having ever met someone like Ghislaine Maxwell, within the same day or within a matter of days, they're already being used.
Absolutely.
And in that case, it didn't even seem like many of them, it's not like they were tied to a chair in the room or in a cage.
No.
They were just being brought back time and time again. Why do they go back?
Whatever they're being offered, because you're talking about the guys that can really pay them a lot of money.
Okay.
All right, because that's the answer to that, right? I'm going to take you to this fabulous resort, and you're going to have anything you want, and you can order from the food menu anything you want, and you can buy anything you want, and we'll take you shopping, and we'll get your hair done and your nails done before you go. It just goes on and on and on, and they're being coerced as models, right? The first step is, we're going to make you a model.
Yeah.
All right, so then they think it's really, and then they start understanding that they are meeting important people. But let's take it back to my little 12 and 13-year-old.
Yes.
All right. normal kids in a normal bedroom during a pandemic who are bored.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they get online and they find this supposed 20-year-old guy who has a picture up of how cool he looks. He could be an 80-year-old guy who's awful, or it could be a woman. 50% of all pimps are women.
Wow.
Because they come up through the ranks as a working girl, and then they get to the top, and then the pimp understands that if you have a woman, it's easier to coerce with a woman to a woman than a man to a woman, right? It's much easier for a woman to go in and say, oh, honey, let's do this, right? And so that coercion is a little bit easier. But this 12 and 13-year-old, they get online with somebody they don't know who it is, if it even is that person, right? And he probably worked at him, I think, probably a couple of days or maybe even weeks that the parents didn't know what was going on. It's like, why do you not know what your children are doing? Well, they're with a friend in the bedroom and they're talking and they don't want to be disturbed. Well, duh, get in there and disturb them, right? This is the time to disturb them, right? And so they just talk them into it. I had a girl who was, I think she was 18. She was older, and the older they get, you think the smarter they would be. That's not necessarily true. So she's a Christian family, beautiful home, amazing money involved with parents and everything. And she got online with this guy for about 3 weeks, and he talked to her and talked to her and talked to her, and she left. She left, and she just went, and there she was. He said, I'll be there on Monday. I will pick you up. Don't bring anything. They always say don't bring anything. That's the first thing I ask a parent on the phone. Did they leave with their phones or without their phones? Because if they left without their phones, they're being trafficked. If they left with their phones, maybe the guy doesn't know what he's doing or whatever's going on. And so the 12 and 13-year-olds did take their phones with them. That was the good news. But they're out there and they don't know what they're doing. And so this little girl, he drove by at 4 o'clock on Monday afternoon, and she walked out and got into the car with him. And then we didn't know where he went. We didn't know where he took her, right? She wasn't on the streets as far as we could tell. She wasn't on the streets in Portland. And so what did we do? It was amazing. The first thing I do after I've checked that out is I go to Greyhound. And they use their names because they have to have ID.
Right.
So their names are on the tickets so we can find out who it is and how it's working. He took her to Pensacola, Florida. We traced his name. We found his mother, do background check. Found his mother. Dad got in an airplane. Dad went to the front door, knocked on the front door, and got his girl back. But it takes all of us doing all that, yeah.
And do you think that there's anything that can be done or what would be the best way to bring awareness to the fact that this isn't always just, someone who would fit the bill of the look of a creepy pedophile. This could be anybody.
You or me.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or somebody that, you believe would have your best interest, or a leader, or whoever. So are there any things that just the average person could be doing, or things that you do to bring awareness to the fact that this is on a grand scale much bigger than most people would even be willing to entertain?
Right. They need to get, a normal person needs to get hooked up with a social media situation where they're getting the right information, which I friend everybody, right? Because until I figure out they're not who I want to have as a friend. But I friend everybody. Right. And then just share, because I'm looking at kids all over the United States. I have 23 different groups that are going out. If I shoot it to Alabama, my Alabama people go out and look for kids. So all of these civilian task forces are on call. All right, there you go. And we look for them that way. So that's perfect. Go on social media, social media, any of them, and get hooked up to somebody that's sharing. And then the best thing a person can do is become educated, especially the parents. So I always recommend, people all the time will give a phone or an iPad or whatever to their kids for a holiday or their birthday.
Mm-hmm.
I say don't do that. Just give it to them on a normal day of the year. Nothing special. You hand them the phone, you hand them the iPad, and you'll say, "Hi, this is my phone and this is my iPad. I paid the bill for these. Therefore, I'm going to have every password that you put on it. You can use it. It's going to be for your use. But I will have every password and I will be able to get into anything anytime I want. I can take that phone anytime I want. And if all texts are removed, you're grounded for life." Because what they've done is they know, okay, mom's going to look at that. I got to delete all these texts, right? And then I tell parents to be sure to have them charge phones, iPads, everything in the parents' bedroom every night when they go to sleep, or whatever designated time is the lights out for the phone and everything. Put it in the parents' bedroom, because that's where kids are really getting completely messed up.
Yeah.
Their grades are going down, they're hooking up with people they shouldn't be talking to, and there they go. So keeping track of that phone and that iPad, and make sure you have the Facebook. They've got passwords on everything, right? Mm-hmm. They have Instagram password, they have Facebook password. You've got to be able to get into every one of those things. And there is an app right now that looks like a calculator, and when you open it up, it's actually for trafficking.
Wow.
So you've got to open all the little apps. I know this is a big job, but if you're going to parent correctly and keep your kids out of trouble, this is good no matter who your kid is, because they're going to be involved in all kinds of things, and you need to know what that is.
How can people best support you and Called to Rescue?
Well, for me, I need people that are willing to go look for people, civilian task force members, and there is training online for that. And I do say no to a lot of people, because there's a lot of people who can't do that. For instance, I just had this beautiful lady say, "I'm giving you this offering because I can't do what you need me to do on the streets." Because most people, when they get to a certain age, they can't go out and walk the streets.
Right.
They can't go look. So, and of course we take offerings, and that's fine. And we're called to rescue.org. So you can find us, you can find out what we're doing and participate that way.
Where else can people find you outside of your website? Do you have social media?
Oh yeah. We have everything. Called to rescue, called to rescue, called to rescue.
Cool. And how did you connect with Advantage Heating originally?
How did I connect with Advantage Heating originally?
I wasn't sure.
I'm not sure either now that you asked me, but I know that your dad and your sister and other employees of Advantage Heating have gone with me overseas to do mission work.
Yeah, I actually want to interview Kate just about some of her experiences working with you. We were supposed to do that last week, and she ended up being sick, and so I figured I'd just wait until after we had a chance to talk.
Yeah, but Kate and Brianna are just amazing and your dad is amazing, right? But if you ask me for sure how your dad connected with us, I'm not sure how that happened.
It feels like it's been a long time.
It's been a really long time. But I don't know if my husband spoke somewhere where he heard me, or I did, or who our connector was, but I'm sure if you ask him, he'll have a much better memory of that than I do.
Probably,
yeah.
And I know that it must have been pretty impactful, because I know then I'm pretty sure Kate did several missions, if you will, with you.
On the street in Portland, absolutely,
And then we have, I don't remember exactly what it is, Bree would probably know better, but I know that there's a small portion of our VIP maintenance plans that where a small portion of those dollars get funneled to.
I know, it's fabulous,
rescue.
Absolutely.
The more, just the flood of social media, if anything, if Wayfair is a bunch of BS, if nothing else, it ramped up the exposure for trafficking. I think that it's tough to say, they maybe should release a better statement or something, but quite frankly, next thing I knew, it seemed like everybody was talking about it, and I was so glad. I mean, we already had this interview set up before that whole thing came out.
Yeah.
I just, it had dawned on me that Advantage Heating and us have been supporting Called to Rescue, and between the Epstein story and Ghislaine Maxwell and all this stuff, it was really rising and bubbling to the surface on social media. And so I thought, you know what, let's do some sort of an interview, because here we have this connection with somebody who's in the know, who's doing this every single day and actually making an impact. And, we should utilize that. And sure enough, earlier in the week, or maybe it was the end of last week, just boom, that whole story broke.
It did.
And next thing I knew, it seems like everybody, to an extent, is talking about child trafficking. And so this couldn't have been a better time to get a chance
And
to
the
talk.
slavery thing, I mean, I'm not diminishing anybody that's been in slavery. I mean, it's horrific. But the slavery thing is really true with child sex trafficking. And they actually have rooms where buyers go, and they sit around the room, and they have the girls come in, and the girls have to do whatever they're asked to do physically, and then they bid on them.
Like the movie Taken.
Exactly like that. It is true. It happens every day.
Wow.
Yeah. And most people, I think, didn't catch that could be true. It was so awful in Taken. Yeah. But it is absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Or at the very least, you would think, oh, it's just a one-off, or this happens from time to time, or it just happens in this one foreign country.
Right. No.
And really it happens everywhere from the bottom all the way to the top.
We just brought down in the Philippines a porn ring that you actually can go in and sign in, and you pay a fee, and you're in the porn ring. And I think there were 650,000 people that we brought down.
Whoa, 650,000?
Yep.
Because it was child pornography?
Yep, and it was pornography, and it was online.
Wow.
So it's a whole different deal. And everybody asks, well, what happened? Right. Everybody wants to know the end run, because we're Americans, right? But what happened is, as soon as you turn it over to the right authorities, you're out of the loop.
Yeah.
It's like with me rescuing a minor child.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I can rescue a minor child. I can be standing there with the child when the police drive up, and I never hear another thing about that child. Because then a foster care or the police or parents or whoever is going to take over and who has authority over that child, then that person's now in control. So I don't always have the end of the story. But my end is I rescued them. They have a chance. They have a chance for life now.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Cyndi.
You're welcome.
Dr. Cyndi Romine.
Oh, yeah, we can forget
Fantastic.
the doctor. Okay, thanks, Brandon. Thanks,
Thank
Brandon.
you so much.
Okay, God bless you.
This was fantastic.
Fantastic.
Seriously,
You were
thank you
great.
so much.